Hey guys, it's Amanda. I'm back to read you another bedtime story. And fall is in the air, so make sure you grab a hot cup of tea or coffee and a nice blanket and get ready to dive in to a new story. I really like this book, guys. I really recommend it if you are having a hard time sleeping. I just think the stories are so good. But tonight, we're going to be reading A Portrait by Albert Mcaster. "Hello there, Malio," said somebody near me. I looked at the man who had pointed out as I had been wishing for a long time to meet this Don Juan. He was no longer young. His gray hair looked a little like those fur bonnets worn by certain northern peoples, and his long beard, which fell down over his chest, had almost somewhat the appearance of fur. He was talking to a lady, leaning toward her, speaking in a low voice and looking at her with an expression full of respect and tenderness. I knew his life, or at least as much as we have known of it. He had loved madly several times, and there had been certain tragedies with which his name had been connected. When I spoke to women who were the loudest in his praise and asked them whence came this power, they always answered, "After thinking for a while, I don't know. He has a certain charm about him." He was certainly not handsome. He had none of the elegance that would ascribe to conquerors of feminine hearts. I wondered what might be his hidden charm. Was it mental? I had never heard of a clever saying of his. In his glance, perhaps? Or in his voice? The voices of some beings have a certain irresistible attraction, almost suggesting the flavor of things good to eat. One is hungry for them, and the sound of their words penetrates us like a dainty morsel. A friend was passing. I asked him, "Do you know Monsieur Malio?" "Yes." "Introduce us." A minute later, we were shaking hands and talking in the doorway. What he said was correct, agreeable to hear. It contained no irritable thought. The voice was soft, sweet, caressing, musical, but I had heard others much more attractive, much more moving. One listened to him with pleasure, just as one would look at a pretty little brook. No tension of the mind was necessary in order to follow him, no hidden meaning arousing curiosity. No expectation awoke interest. His conversation was rather restful, but it did not awaken in one either a desire to answer, to contradict, or to approve. And it was as easy to answer him as it was to listen to him. The response came to the lips of its own accord, as soon as he had finished talking, and phrases turned towards him as if he had naturally aroused them. One thought soon struck me. I had known him for a quarter of an hour, and it seemed as if he were already one of my old friends, that I had known all about him for a long time. His face, his gestures, his voice, his ideas. Suddenly, after a few minutes of conversation, he seemed already to be installed in my intimacy. All constraint disappeared between us, and had he so desired, I might have confided in him as one confides only in old friends. Certainly there was some mystery about him, those barriers that are closed between most people and that are lowered with time when sympathy, similar tastes, equal intellectual culture, and constant intercourse remove constraint. Those barriers seem not to exist between him or me, and no doubt this was case between him and all people, both men and women, whom fate threw in his path. After half an hour we parted, promising to see each other often, and he gave me his address after inviting me to take him to lunch in 2 days. I forgot what hour he had stated, and I arrived too soon. He was not yet home. A correct and silent domestic showed me into a beautiful, quiet, softly lighted parlor. I felt comfortable there, at home. How often I have noticed the influence of apartments on the character and on the mind. There are some which make one feel foolish, in others, on the contrary, one always feel lively. Some make us sad, although well lighted and decorated in light-colored furniture. Others cheer us up, although hung with somber material. Our eye, like our heart, has its likes and dislikes, of which it does not inform us, and which it secretly imposes on our temperament. The harmony of furniture, walls, the style of ensemble act immediately on our mental state, just as the air from the woods, the sea, or the mountain modifies our physical natures. I sat down on a cushion-covered divan and felt myself suddenly carried and supported by these little silk bags of feathers, as if the outline of my body had been marked out beforehand on this couch. Then I looked about. There was nothing striking about the room. Everywhere were beautiful and modest things, simple and rare furniture, oriental curtains which did not seem to come from a department store but from the interior of a harem, and exactly opposite me hung the portrait of a woman. It was a portrait of medium size, showing the head and the upper part of the body, and the hands which were holding a book. She was young, bareheaded. Ribbons were woven in her hair. She was smiling sadly. Was it because she was bareheaded? Was it merely her natural expression? I never have seen a portrait of a lady which seemed so much in its place as that one in that dwelling. Of all those, I knew I'd seen nothing like that one. All those that I know are on exhibition, whether the lady be dressed in her gaudiest gown with an attractive headdress and a look which shows that she is posing first of all before the artist and then before those who will look at her, or whether they have taken a comfortable attitude in an ordinary gown. Some are standing majestically in all their beauty, which is not at all natural to them in life. All of them have something, a flower or a jewel, a crease in the dress or a curve of the lip, which one feels to have been placed there for effect by the artist. Whether they wear a hat or merely their hair, one can immediately notice that they are not entirely natural. Why? One cannot say without knowing them, but the effect is there. They seem to be calling somewhere, on people whom they wish to please, and to whom they wish to appear at their best advantage. And they have studied their attitudes, sometimes modest, sometimes haughty. What could one say about this one? She was at home and alone. Yes, she was alone, for she was smiling as one smiles when thinking in solitude of something sad or sweet, and not as one smiles when someone is being watched. She seemed so much alone and so much at home that she made the whole large apartment seem absolutely empty. She alone lived in it, filled it, gave it life. Many people might come in and converse, laugh, even sing. She would still be alone with a solitary smile, and she alone would give it life with her pictured gaze. That look also was unique. It fell directly on me, fixed and caressing without seeing me. All portraits know that they are being watched, and they answer with their eyes, which see, think, follow us without leaving us from the very moment we enter the apartment they inhabit. This one did not see me. It saw nothing, although its look was fixed directly on me. I remember the surprising verse of Baudelaire. And your eyes, attractive as those of a portrait. They did indeed attract me in an irresistible manner. Those painted eyes which had lived, or which were perhaps still living, threw over me a strange, powerful spell. Oh, what an infinite and tender charm, like a passing breeze, like a dying sunset of lilac rose and blue. a little sad like an approaching night, which comes behind the somber frame and out of those impenetrable eyes. Those eyes, created by a few strokes from a brush, hide behind them the mystery of which seems to be and which does not exist, which can appear in the eyes of a woman, which can make love blossom within us. The door opened and M. Malile entered. He excused himself for being late. I excused myself for being ahead of time. Then I said, "Might I ask you, who is this lady?" He answered, "That is my mother. She died very young." Then I understood whence came the inexplicable attraction of this man. That was quite a short one tonight, so I think I'll read one more for you guys, if that's all right. We'll just go with the next one. The Golden Windows by Laura E. Richards. All day long the little boy had worked hard, in field and barn and shed, for his people were poor farmers and could not pay a workman. But at sunset there came an hour that was all his own, for his father had given it to him. Then the boy would go up to the top of the hill and look across at another hill that rose some miles away. On this far hill stood a house with windows of clear gold and diamonds. They shone and blazed so that it made the boy wink to look at them. But after a while the people in the house put up shutters, as it seemed, and then it looked like any common farmhouse. The boy supposed they did it because it was supper time, and then he would go into the house and have his supper of bread and milk, and so to bed. One day the boy's father called him and said, "You have been a good boy and have earned a holiday. Take this day for your own, but remember that God gave it, and try to learn some good thing." The boy thanked his father and kissed his mother. Then he put a piece of bread in his pocket and started off to find the house with the golden windows. It was pleasant walking. His bare feet made marks in the white dust, and when he looked back, the footprints seemed to be following him and making company for him. His shadow, too, kept beside him and would dance or run with him as he pleased, so it was very cheerful. By and by he felt hungry, and he sat down by a brown brook that ran through the alder hedge by the roadside and ate his bread and drank the clear water. Then he scattered the crumbs for the birds, as his mother had taught him to do, and went on his way. After a long time he came to a high green hill, and when he had climbed that hill there was a house on the top. But it seems that the shutters were up, for he could not see the golden windows. He came up to the house, and then he could well have wept, for the windows were of clear glass, like any others, and there was no gold anywhere about them. A woman came to the door and looked kindly at the boy and asked him what he wanted. "I saw the golden windows from the hilltop," he said, "and I came to see them, but now they are only glass." The woman shook her head and laughed. "We are poor farming people," she said, "and are not likely to have gold about our windows, but glass is better to see through." She bade the boy sit down on the broad stone step at the door and brought him a cup of milk and a cake and bade him rest. Then she called her daughter, a child of his own age, and nodded kindly at the two and went back to her work. The little girl was barefooted like himself and wore a brown cotton gown, but her hair was golden like the windows he had seen, and her eyes were blue like the sky at noon. She led the boy about the farm and showed him her black calf with a white star on its forehead, and he told her about his own at home, which was red like a chestnut, with 4 white feet. Then, when they had eaten an apple together, and so had become friends, the boy asked her about the golden windows. The little girl nodded and said she knew all about them, only he had mistaken the house. "You have come quite the wrong way," she said. "Come with me, and I will show you the house with the golden windows, and then you will see for yourself." They went to the knoll that rose behind the farmhouse, and as they went, the little girl told them that the golden windows could only be seen at a certain hour, about sunset. "Yes, I know that," said the boy. When they reached the top of the knoll, the girl turned and pointed, and there on a hill, far away, stood a house with windows of clear gold and diamond, just as he had seen them. And when they looked again, the boy saw that it was his own home. Then he told the little girl that he must go, and he gave her his best pebble, the white one with the red band that he carried for a year in his pocket. And she gave him 3 horse chestnuts, one red like satin, one spotted, and one white like milk. He kissed her and promised to come again, but he did not tell her what he had learned. And so he went back down the hill, and the little girl stood in the sunset light and watched him. The way home was long, and it was dark before the boy reached his father's house. But the lamplight and firelight shone, making them almost as bright as he had seen them from the hilltop. And when he opened the door, his mother came to kiss him, and his little sister ran to throw her arms around his neck. And his father looked up and smiled from his seat by the fire. "Have you had a good day?" asked his mother. Yes, the boy had a very good day. "And have you learned anything?" asked his father. "Yes," said the boy. "I have learned that our house has windows of gold and diamond." I think they're such lovely stories. But if you have anything that you'd like me to read or any suggestions at all, please do let me know. Either put them in the comments or head over to my Instagram. But I hope you guys are nice and relaxed. I know I am. And I hope you have a great night's sleep. Make sure you tune in next week for some more bedtime stories. Good night.